Okay, let's start. I'm Don Erickson. I'm the current president of Historic Tacoma. And apparently there was some confusion. Some people thought that maybe this was Tacoma Historical Society. They're not meeting here tonight. I think they're meeting up the hill. That's a joke because it was misadvertised in the weekly. We really want to thank Rick and Jory for, on short notice, making their facility available for us. Yay, Rick! Yay, Jory! Okay. I'd like to start by introducing our board member, Gary Knutson. Raise your hand as I go through. Gary Knutson is our past president, and our president-elect this coming year, 2019, is Kathleen Brooker. Kathleen? Who's Kathleen? And our vice president is Jennifer Mortensen. Jennifer, there she is. She's a new board member, and she's stepping right up to take on responsibilities. Our treasurer is Rick. Everybody knows Rick. Rick Semple. Okay. And our secretary is Carol Goforth. Carol? She's in the back here. Yay. Okay, Carol. And our historian, he's not here. He's not an officially designated historian, but he does a lot of our nominations. That's Marshall McClintock. And we have, this last year, we have hired a social outreach director. And that's Michael Lafreniere. Michael, he was greeting you at the door, and here he is in the blue shorts. Michael's doing a tremendous job in getting our message out in social media. So we're going to start here with a quick overview of historic Tacoma. We'll start next with the first slide. This is our mission statement, and is to conserve and enhance Tacoma's architectural and urban design, and that's important, urban design. We're not just buildings, we're neighborhoods, we're streetscapes, we're more than just buildings. And we do that, whoops, there goes our, I'll talk loud. We do it through education, advocacy, and preservation. So next. We started, Sharon Winters, back east now, or in Florida, I guess, started Historic Tacoma back in 2007. And she met with a group of people who were not just concerned about designation, and what the Historical Society does, but people who would really advocate and educate regarding historic preservation. So that's a big component of what we do. So we initially started with the architectural and broadened it, as I suggested, to urban design. Next. Today, we're also concerned about a quality built environment worthy of preservation in the future. And that's an important distinction. We're not just looking backwards, we're looking forward. Because if we don't have quality architecture and urban design, we're not going to have anything worth designating in 50 or 100 years from now. So it's an important consideration. And what do? We engage with others. We're a small organization. In order to do what we do, we have to engage with local, county, and state people, officers, and people working in historic preservation. So that's a big component. Next. This is, the top one there this really relates to the awards tonight. And this is the economic viability and reuse of buildings. It's one thing to designate them, but if they don't have an economic and viable reuse, they'll fall in despair fairly quickly, and they won't contribute to the surrounding environment. So that's a very critical component, the first one there. And then another thing that we do that I think makes it somewhat unique, we're strong advocates working with the city on developing public policy for preservation, for preventing untimely demolition, and recycling used components of buildings, getting them back into in the marketplace. And these awards that you see are a real component. They're emblematic of this concept. Next. So what are some of the accomplishments? What does Historic Tacoma do? This last 2 years, we nominated the Hosmer House, very interesting. Michael Sullivan could talk hours probably about it, but the first mayor of Tacoma, that was their residence, an Italianate style wood frame piece of architecture. Moved 3 times, now in an ideal location across the street from the Panages Theater. A couple other buildings that were designated. One of our board members' house is down in Old Town, was designated recently. And then the Ashbury House. And I don't know if everybody knows, but Nettie Ashbury was a black woman. She's considered probably the first black woman to receive a PhD in the United States. So that's a pretty significant building. Next. We've been pushing this idea of a quality urban environment, the idea of design review. The city says, yeah, they're looking at it. But some of us worked with the Wright Park Seymour Conservatory and the Metro Parks, their expansion, a major expansion of the conservatory. And there were real concerns about how they were going about it, whether they were going to incorporate the existing conservatory into the way the new building would work. Also, there was a concern about siting some of these fairly large glass enclosures out of the lower playfield and more into the hillside. So we did that. That was kind of a fun thing we did. Next. Education. A year and a half or so ago, we did an event at Feast up on 11th Street. We probably had 25 or 30 people attend that event, and we worked with Randy Cook of TCF Architecture to do a design charrette. So everybody got some paper and pencils and pens, and they got a plan of the existing Feast building, and the idea was to come up with some alternative uses for it as an example for the future. So it was an educational thing about reuse of an existing building. Next. Some other examples, and there's, right here. Yeah, let's pass it around. Right by the post. This was an interesting project. Historic Tacoma provided seed money. Rick and I and Jory were involved with the Citizens Advisory Committee for the relocation of the Amtrak station from down here on Puyallup up to Freight House Square as part of the city's transportation center. And out of that came an opportunity to do some art. The art is on private property, so it did go through the typical public kind of event or evaluation, if you will. But what we did is we provided some seed money to come up with some concepts. We worked with Warfield Creative as a design consultant. Rick was involved, and we came up with this concept of a 19 by 36 foot long ceramic mural with the theme of the romance of railroading. And we researched and we went back and we found about the Hiawatha. Hiawatha came here from the East Coast. In fact, it was many different engines. It was called the Hiawatha, but it wasn't one train. Different engines took it up over the mountains, etc. So we found an Art Deco 1939 Hiawatha engine, and if you see it in real life, it's 19 feet high on the wall. It fills up the whole wall. So we're passing around a preliminary board that we did for this project, so you get a sense of the scale. Because the station, Amtrak station, is closed until the automated system that did work wasn't there on December 18th, I think it was, when they had that catastrophic crash and three people lost their lives. It will, I'm told, open this coming spring. So when it does, there are doors that lift up, garage-style doors, and you'll be able to see this mural from the street or an arcade inside. So next. Speculative demolition, we have a watch list. We're updating that. Here are two houses on North 2nd Street. They were targeted for demo, and we worked with the property owner and property owners and the city to save those buildings. They're part of a critical streetscape on the west side of 2nd Avenue south of Yakima. So they were saved. That's the type of thing we try to do. Next. In enhancing the built environment, this is where we've been trying to get the city interested in design review. Seattle, I tell people, I used to work in Seattle years ago, they've had a design commission for 50 years. And it's not a concept. Most cities now have some kind of design review where they're looking at projects. And so we received some money recently as a part of a mitigation program, and we're trying to use that. We'll look at using it for preservation in areas such as mixed-use centers, Proctor Stadium, Lincoln, areas where there's pressure increasing for new development and a higher density development. A lot of those areas have older buildings integrated in them, within them. And so we're looking at ways that we can inventory those buildings and possibly come up with some community-based design guidelines for preserving them or integrating them into the new architecture as it's built. Next. Advocacy, another key component of what we do. Fire station number 5 came to our attention. I think maybe Rick was the first to focus on that. But the city wanted to tear down the existing, I think it's 1928 fire station. It's on the national, the state, and the local registry. If you haven't seen it, go down 11th and you'll see it. It's a little green oasis in a sea of asphalt and cyclone fences and concrete, but it has some really nice trees. It's quite a unique building. It looks like something you would see in a more contemporary subdivision, but think about this. This wasn't in the 50s. This was back in the 20s.
Where is it?
11th, you go across the bridge and go out about a quarter of a mile, and it's on the right. Gary, do you remember the cross street? Was it?
Can't get there. It's on the corner of Taylor and 11.
Taylor and 11.
By the Highlands Bridge.
Taylor's the cross street. Yeah. It's and when we were out there, I don't have a picture of it. There's a beautiful old fire engine, probably 7,500 years old inside. Next. Other things we do are community events. Preservation Month in May, we participated at that. They had a focus or did it out at Earthwise Salvage. Does everybody know about Earthwise Salvage?
Yeah.
Okay, they have been a major donor to us over the years, where people give materials to them and they can write it off as a tax donation. So they're pretty special to us.
Is that place off of Portland Ave or McKinley Ave?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
McKinley and
Yeah.
60.
Yeah,
Thank you.
you can spend a whole morning in there looking at stuff.
Oh, yeah.
So, the other thing was the Cushman Substation Open House. This is just a few weeks ago, and 600 or 700 people, somebody told me 1,000, attended this event in the Proctor neighborhood. And it was a rainy, wet day, as you can see in that top slide. And if you waited, after half an hour or so, you finally got inside and you got a glimpse of the interior high ceiling vaulted space. So the community is very interested in community-based reuse of this building. Next. Some other examples. City, I don't know, I think probably everybody knows the city is pursuing densification of our lower density residential areas, single family, duplex, triplex. We have been involved with that. We're not opposed to cottages and backyards, but we want to ensure that they're done right, so they respect privacy with neighbors. They preferably have access off the alley, so they're not crowding up the streets, and that the people who are doing it do put in privacy screens and fencing, so the neighbors don't have to take that on for themselves. So what we've done on this, we testified before the city's planning commission. We've met with North End Community Council members, some of whom are here tonight. And we've met with council members, and the last thing we did recently is we created some recommendations on massing and siding for these rear yard cottages. It's being sold as affordable housing. At $300 a square foot, it's not affordable housing, it's alternative housing. And it makes sense. If you have so many empty nesters or the kids have gone off, have a big house, they can live in the backyard in a cottage and rent or sell the big house in the front. Next. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Rick. He's going to run you through the financials. And after that, our president-elect Kathleen's going to come up.
Thank you, Don.
Okay.
Where's the,
You just say next.
oh, there's the button. Okay. So we're a very small organization, as you can see. $17,000. So we've been spending our money and getting some in as it goes. And we've been spending, next, thank you. We've been spending most of our money this last year on redoing our website. And that's what we're hoping to move toward, more of a web-based organization as opposed to a paper-based organization. So we hope not to get down to zero, but we'll move down a little further and take a chance on then growing after we build that website to be strong. Okay? Thank you. Kathleen? Brooker?
Who's doing your website? Who's building it?
Hemisphere Design, Adam, they're on Union. They did the Prairie Line Trail website and the Dome District website, and anybody else know other websites they've done?
Tacoma Historical Society.
The Tacoma Historical Society as well. So we're in good company there, and they've given us, we feel, a pretty good rate. So we're working with them closely. Yeah.
Yeah, and more about that. I'm Kathleen Brooker. I'm the incoming president, and I'd like to take a moment and thank Don, who's done such a great job for us as president, and our president before that, Gary. Both of these folks are very knowledgeable architects and urban design specialists, and I think that impact's been great for the organization. So what I would like to focus on in 2019 is actually through a Heritage Project grant that we got from the city and then support from Pierce County to develop this new website, and it'll be launched within the next month. We're excited about that, and we're going to be using it as an interactive way to update and activate our watch list. And Jennifer and I are going to be looking at the watch list and trying to make it a very sort of a lead entity for Historic Tacoma. We want you to help us identify places that are endangered, and then we want to work with private owners and public advocates to save them and put them back into reuse. So that is going to be one of our centerpieces of advocacy in 2019. We'll also be continuing to identify overlooked historic sites in the new mixed-use centers, and we'll be partnering with the city's preservation staff on that. We think it's really essential to identify at the front end the historic buildings that are going to be impacted by these new densified zoning changes. We'll be forging new partnerships, I'm sure, with the development community to identify and promote reuse projects across Tacoma. And then we'll be tackling threats as always, but pursuing opportunities as they arise. And I'm sure everyone's aware that Proposition 1 passed, which is, it's incredible, really. I was thrilled to see that 60% of our voters thought culture was something worth investing in. And we know that we will be excited to work with the arts community and the heritage community to offer new programming through this. So we welcome your suggestions and help us focus our efforts to best serve Tacoma next year. I am now going to introduce Clara. Am I on the right track, Don? Okay. Clara Utes is going to be making,
multiple jobs, y'all. I'll be right there.
oops,
All right. Cool.
the exciting part of our program, which is our awards. Clara is a musician, a Tacoma resident, who's returning here after 3 years in the UK. And we're excited to have her back, so.
Thank you, Kathleen. Hi, pals. I'm Clara. I'm actually tonight Clara Lindenino Utes. I'm filling in for our town-eccentric, extraordinary organizer, amazing human. So I'm just going to do my best to deliver the amazing amount of work that she put in researching all of these historic properties and presenting these beautiful artistic vision trophies to our honorees tonight. So the Tacoma artist community identified and nominated tonight's 5 honorees, which Historic Tacoma is proud to present. In recent years, there have been many developers rehabbing our older and vacant buildings, and it's been challenging to settle on only 5. The artistic community has been trying to find a cross-section of Tacoma, considering things like scale, investment of time and energy, diversity of neighborhoods, the challenges and the functions of their venues in the town. So we're really trying to go across the board. We hope we've done it, but we've really tried to acknowledge creative reuse and adaptive reuse of historic spaces here in Tacoma. From the one-man band restoration by Jeff Call, who's a pioneer on South Tacoma Way, to the giant high-budget projects like McMenamin's Elks Lodge, which is now being, or Elks Temple, excuse me. Gotta get the semantics right. Also, Tacoma's Hilltop saw an affordable housing makeover after transforming the Brown Star Grill. Meanwhile, we're all sitting here in Rick and Jory's beautiful Trecento block, which they have spent 20 years personally revitalizing. And then last but not least in our presentation tonight will be Seven Seas Brewing. No adaptive reuse here, but a return to form, a brewery then and a brewery again now. Thank goodness, the beer's good. Did you try it? Okay, so first of all, I would love to introduce Jeff Call. And Rick, if you're my trophy man, would you feel comfortable coming and presenting these beautiful objects? Amazing. The keeper of the trophies. Yeah. Yeah. Could I actually ask Jeff Call, Kevin Grossman, Mike Runyon, Tim Hills, and Jory to all have a seat in the hot seats. We're all here to admire you. And Karen Hallis? Is she here? Yay! Would you also please join them? Do you say it Hollis or Hallis? Hallis. I'm glad I came. Yes.
Grab a chair, grab that chair.
Okay.
You got it? We got one.
Cool. Okay. We did it. Thank you, Lynn.
We're there.
Okay. All right.
Alrighty.
Cool. And I'll just point at you.
So the mic's dead.
It's dead. The PA is dead, but it's okay. In
We
true
know-
Tacoma fashion.
We know what to get him for Christmas.
Exactly, I know. All right. So, first things first, in honor of Stonegate Pizza and Rum Bar, can we please celebrate Jeff and Karen? Please stand. Please accept this trophy on behalf of Historic Tacoma and the the artist community. This trophy was made by Elaine Vogel and Ed Camus to celebrate your hard work and dedication at Stonegate. Okay, go ahead and change it. So Jeff Call, I'm about to speak about you in the third person. I hope it's not too weird. Jeff can't remember the thriving South Tacoma Way neighborhood with its own theater and successful businesses of the 40s and 50s. It was a bit before his time. When he was a child, his mother bought him a 3-speed Schwinn bicycle at the former South Tacoma Wheels, and little did he know that shop was one day going to become his own Stonegate Pizza and Rum Bar, what we are looking at here. What he does remember is the empty storefronts and the down at the heels view shops of the 80s and 90s, and Jeff really wanted to turn the Sow's Ear neighborhood into the Silk Purse of Tacoma. I think he's doing it. Jeff wanted to be a pioneer, to locate himself at a crossroads of future commerce in the city. You can change the slide for me. He bought the building in 2007 and was attracted to its handsome but somewhat hidden facade. If you would go to the next slide. I've heard that you personally knocked out that brick in front of the window, which more power to you. As the primary planner, designer, and hammer swinger, and with a little help from his friends, Jeff transformed this space into a thriving bar, restaurant, and music venue that it is today. Go ahead and change it for me. So we're honoring Jeff tonight, not only for his pioneering spirit, but because he has rebuilt very green. So as we can see here, he's used reclaimed wood. Reclaimed oak is used on the bar. Cherry wood doors and trim came from the Key Bank renovation. And of course, the building had to be brought up to code with wiring and plumbing and all of that. So the planned estimation, the renovation estimation of 8 months turned into 2 years. And in that time, not only did he renovate this space, but worked with his partner, Karen Hallis, to bring art into the space. If you would go to the next slide for me. So art dominates Stonegate. The stair to the...
Karen is my fabulous artist. So
She's your
when you see
fabulous
this
artist,
stuff,
yeah.
it's
All Karen. So the stair to the second floor has stunning hand-painted shreds by Karen. If you'd go to the next one for me. The upper bar surface features recognizable paintings of famous rock and roll musicians with trompe-l'oeil musical instruments on the floor, which are also by Karen. And next slide, please. Jeff and Karen collaborated on this steel sculpture behind the bar, which is a stainless steel sheet metal montage of silhouetted skyscrapers and guitars. And the effect is pretty dazzling. You can't take your eyes off it. Next slide, please. It's all about art at the Stonegate. They are trying to bring musicians, comedians, a variety of arts programming into the city. They've got their Macaulay sound system, trying to make it a venue to attract nationwide artists and really bring some life to that South Tacoma Way neighborhood. So for historic Tacoma and the artist community, it's really gratifying to see something like this happening outside the downtown core. And thank you so much for your dedication and your vision. So next, I'd like to ask Jory to please stand. Jory and Rick, this beautiful gang, is responsible for the Trecento block, which you are all now sitting in. Rick, do you want to present yourself and Jory with a trophy made by my Marslier? This is yours. Yeah, a promise. Yeah, we talked about it. Yes.
Stand in the light.
The people want to see ya. gonna talk at you for a while. Is that okay? Okay. You want to go to that next one for me? Normally, the rest of us, maybe sane ones of us, would think that what they've accomplished on this block was impossible. But Rick and Jory have done it. In the last 20 years, they have bought this block and remodeled it, these 4 adjoining structures, and basically revitalized this district. Very impressive. It's called the Trecento block from 301 to 323 Puyallup Avenue, and it's now been placed on Tacoma's Register of Historic Places. So, would you go to the next one for me, darling? The 301 to 303 building was initially designed by the noted architectural firm of Frederick Lundberg for the Allen Lubricating Company in 1924. Lundberg designed other noted Tacoma buildings, including the Lynn Funeral Home and the Broadmoor Apartments. If you'd go to one more. The architecture reflected the Mission Moderne style, with a distinctive black and white checkerboard trim, and the Texaco Star Medallion, which tops the center 2-story structure, as we can see in the next slide. Yay! There were a number of occupants after Allen Lubricating, including Industrial Rubber and Gonzalez Motors. If you'd go to the next one. 309 to 311, which is next door, was designed in 1926 for the Tacoma branch of Mack International Truck Corporation. It was built in the early 20th century commercial style with a decorative curvilinear parapet, and additional occupants included Sullivan Tires, Muller Harkins, Alloy Motor Parts, and the Salvation Army. Next slide. And this building. I think, is this when a bus ran into the building? Yeah, this was a true story. Where we are sitting now once looked like this. This is 323 Puyallup Avenue, which was initially, oh, I'm sorry. I messed up. That's next door. I lied to you. Okay. Next slide then. I got behind. Here we are. 323 Puyallup Avenue, initially designed as an office building for the Reliance Lumber Company. It is in the neo-colonial residential character with mansard roof and dormers and the traditional trim. Next slide, please. For a lengthy period, it was the home of Duro-Built Furniture and Upholstery, until the city filed for eminent domain in order to build the D Street overpass, which forced the business to move. Next slide, please. But from 2001 to date, Rick and Jory have, with incredible vision, rehabilitated these tired structures. They have creatively remodeled and recycled building materials, keeping the careful consideration to these buildings' historical roots in mind. Their focus has been on providing spaces for local artists and affordable workplaces at that. I have read from Lynn that each of your 17 spaces are now occupied, which is huge. So they have turned straw into gold here on Puyallup Avenue. And Rick and Jory, thank you for your vision and dedication. So, if I could have my trophy friend back, thank you. And if I could have Kevin Grossman please stand. Hello, Kevin. Is it Pokert or Pochert? Pochert, okay. I've been wrestling with that all day. Good to know. So, on behalf of Historic Tacoma and the artist community, please accept this trophy created by Peter Darling in recognition of the Pochert and Kellogg Sicker buildings. So, in the fall of 2005, the city of Tacoma purchased the Poacher and Kellogg Sicker buildings, also known as the Brown Star Grill property. The buildings, earlier in their lifetime, they were built in the 20s, had been proud demonstrations of private investment in Hilltop. K Street, which is now Martin Luther King Jr. Way, next slide please, was quite decrepit. It was really fallen apart by the 90s. The buildings in the neighborhood had deteriorated, and many people in the city were considering the idea of having the buildings raised. Next slide please. Around 2012, the city of Tacoma took a renewed interest in the Hilltop and MLK neighborhoods. The KSP buildings were in the sub-area plan as catalyst projects. Historic Tacoma took further action to protect the properties from being razed, nominating this property to the City Historic Register. Next slide, please. At the same time, a group of people with the Hilltop Business Association became concerned about the demolition of the properties for replacement by very low-income housing right in the middle of the business district. Next slide. The business district supported the council, whose adopted perspective in the sub-area plan now advocated for a renovation of the properties, which would provide the best boost to the neighborhood. Next slide. So Kevin over here, with the business district and the manager of Tacoma Historic Rehab, secured a purchase agreement with the city for the properties. Next slide. Stakeholders including the Hilltop Action Coalition, the Tacoma Housing Authority, the Tacoma Pierce County Black Collective, the New Tacoma and Central Tacoma Neighborhood Councils, and Historic Tacoma all endorsed Grossman's proposal for rehab and adaptive reuse of the KSP buildings. This is a floor plan of some of the low-income housing on the second floor of the buildings. Next slide, please. Tacoma Historic Rehab secured capital and project manager partners with Power Property Consultants out of Federal Way. Next slide. They are also managing members of the group that owns the post office building in downtown Tacoma, now renamed Courthouse Square. Final slide. Power Properties and their partners, the Bollinger Family Trust, invested in the properties with Grossman, bringing Kellogg, Sicker, and Poacher back to life as 10 residential homes on the upper floor and locally owned community gathering coffee shops and restaurants on the ground floor. The coffee shop shown here is the Red Elm. So from eyesore to community gem, and as a great model of historic rehab and particularly collaboration in reuse, we honor you tonight, Kevin. Thank you so much for your dedication and your vision. All right. Next, please. Cool. You're good. All right. Can I have Mike Runyon? Did I say it right? Someone? Yeah. McMenamin's is first. I'm sorry, everyone. Tim Hills, please stand. All right. On behalf of Historic Tacoma and the artist community, please accept this trophy designed by Steve LaBerge. Tonight we're celebrating Tim in lieu of, as well as the brothers McMenamin on their work with McMenamin's Elks Temple. Next slide, please. Brothers Mike and Brian McMenamin first opened the Barley Mill Pub in Southeast Portland in 1983, and over the past 35 years, they have grown to include restaurants, historic hotels, and live music venues, breweries, distilleries, a winery, and more. I do believe they now have 55 locations across the Pacific Northwest. I know, it's a lot. Next slide, please. Mike and Brian are inspired by projects that create a sense of community, rehabilitate important historic structures, and ultimately have a positive impact on the communities they inhabit. This love of community with the inspiration that follows have been passed on to their next generation who have joined in the family-owned business. Next slide. In Mike McMenamin's own words, our company has evolved over the years. Now we're looking to do projects that can really make a difference in a community, and restoring the Tacoma Elks building, bringing it back to life, and bringing out the history is pretty valuable to this community and to us. Next slide. A long history of reimagining interesting spaces has taught the McMenamin family that the best results are achieved through the combined cultural experiences of travel, food, drink, music, history, original site-specific art, and public spaces that focus on community. The newest embodiment of these values, the Elks Temple, is a grand Beaux Arts building constructed in 1915. Next slide, please. It is listed on the National Register of Historic Places and is being renovated in part using tax credits approved by the National Park Service in partnership with Ohio-based Sherwin-Williams Company. Next. McMenamin's Elks Temple, opening in spring 2019, will be a vibrant community gathering place with a family-friendly restaurant, hotel, brewery, small bars, and live music venue. Next. And one more. You'd see. Bless you. So, Tim, please accept our gratitude for the vision and dedication going into the McMenamin's Elks Temple.
Thank you so much.
Okay. We got there in the end. Mike, please stand.
I know which one.
You know? Yes. All right. Mike, would you please accept this trophy designed by Ann Darling on behalf of Historic Tacoma and the artist community for your work at Seven Seas Brewing? So, I really hope I'm going to say your partner's name right. I'm going to do my best. Is it Gooderson?
Got it.
Nice. All right. I also have a Germanic name. Who knew? So Travis Gooderson and Mike Runyon, Puget Sound natives, founded their business in 2009. Instead of an adaptive reuse of the building, this is a return to this building's historical use. It's on Tacoma's Register of Historic Places, and it's returning brewery operations to what was once a brewery neighborhood in the city. Next slide, please. They have tried, the renovation took only 4 months to complete the brewing operations and 8 months to renovate the public section of the building. Next slide. The brewing history here is palpable as you walk through the structure. Names of past workers and the years they were employed are carved into beams and trusses. Next slide. Aerial walkways and skeletons of conveyance systems still adorn the building. Next slide. The layout and construction type suits manufacturing and the needs of a brewery very well. The loading docks, high ceilings, robust construction, freight elevator are some of the characteristics which have preserved this amazing space. Next slide, please. The 80,000 square foot space allows for continued growth and expansion of Seven Seas Brewing. Next slide. The project not only returned brewing to the once bustling brewery district, but also welcomes the public into a family-friendly gathering place, greeting both local residents and visitors alike. Next slide. Seven Seas offers 8 year-round brews, 3 rotating seasonal brews, an array of vintage ales, and an extensive taproom reserve series. As the first brewery in Washington to can craft beer, they have blazed a path of environmentally friendly packaging that has since been adopted by many others, and the establishment is open every day. Next slide. As they grow brewing operations, they are continuously adding equipment and expanding services. The retail taproom is always being improved and updated, and Mike, on behalf of all of us, we thank you for your vision and your dedication. And I believe I'm bringing Dawn back up to close the meeting. Is that correct? Thank you so much.
Just want to thank you all for coming. Remind you that we are a nonprofit. We've gone from a membership model to a donation model now. There are some forms in the back if you want to consider contributing now or sometime in the future. There's wine and beer and water and food on the table, so go enjoy. Thank you all for coming.
Fill your glass with Heidelberg, here's the reason why. It's that slow brewed Heidelberg, you'll love it once you try. Lighter, milder Heidelberg, the light refreshing beer. Brewed a very special way to satisfy just you, because it's slow brewed, slow brewed. Just fill your glass with Heidelberg.
Heidelberg beer has that light, fine flavor because it's slow brewed. A special way of brewing and natural mellowing plus extra weeks of aging. Enjoy a Heidelberg, the light, slow brewed beer.
Because it's slow brewed, just fill your glass with Heidelberg.
Heidelberg Brewing Company, Tacoma, Washington.